Sorry about that. I was listening to one of my favorite female artists, Bonnie Raitt, and today's her birthday. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Welcome to episode 21 of Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy. Hey, I'm on the mend. I'm mending from surgery. I had hand surgery um, this past week, and it was a trip. Well, I took a trip. I had to go to Lubbock to have it, but it turned out to be a trip. Yeah. So I've been under before, a couple of times actually, in surgery, and been completely sedated where I was, not conscious. This was a little different. The surgery was on the top of my wrist. I had a cyst I had to remove. I don't want to get into any of the gory details necessarily, but it was bothering me, and I had some range of motion that was limited, and it was painful occasionally. So I thought, you know what? I'm a young guy still. I want to be able to. I'm coming up on retirement, but I want to be able to enjoy it. So my wife and I, discussed it at length what we were going to do, and we opted for the surgery. So they they did a nerve block in my armpit, and that wasn't pleasant. I mean, they had to find the nerve, and then they did a multiple injections directly into the nerve. But to find the nerve and to get to the nerve, they had to be a little creative and turn here or there. And of course, I was awake for all that. But anyway, then as it started to numb my whole arm from my shoulder down to the tip of my fingers, I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't move anything. It's just so weird to look at your hand and tell your fingers to move and nothing happens. It's kind of freaky. So that's what I meant by it was a trip. But the team, the doctors, the nurses, the surgical team, the anesthesiologist, the assistant were just great. I did actually feel a little bit of the initial cutting, and I had to say, "Am I supposed to be feeling that?" Because no, again, I was conscious, and they said, "No, let's." And then as soon as I mentioned anything, the assistant anesthesiologist did something with my IV and made me happy. But anyway, even after the surgery, post surgery, my arm was completely. It felt like it weighed 50 pounds. But anyway, enough of that. I'm on the mend again, like I said. I'm here doing the show, obviously, at the studio here at Farmers Electric Cooperative. And happy to be here today. So I got some nice flowers from work. I felt bad because my wife doesn't often get flowers, and that's something you guys that are listening probably should do. In hindsight, I probably should have done that far more often than I did. But she said she doesn't want flowers, but whenever I give her flowers, she just lights up. She could light up a room with her smile when I give her flowers. So I need to do that more often. You guys that are listening, I would suggest you probably make a habit of that. But I think about growing a little older and just dealing with things like this. This is something that never even crossed my mind, removing something from my hand that was causing problems, a cyst. And, now I'm thinking maybe your hearing aids are next. All you got to do is ask my coworkers or my wife, and they'll tell you I probably need hearing aids. But, I think it's more them mumbling than anything. But has anyone out there had their first fire of the year or the season yet? Fireplace. We have. It's our. I think I've had 3 fires last week. Haven't had anything this week. I am going out of town. Going as part of my recovery. I'm going to our house, and we have a house in Las Vegas, New Mexico, up in northern New Mexico, and I'm gonna kick back there with my wife for a couple of days and take in some of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains and air. And it's the coolest thing to sit there on Saturday morning and hear the call to worship, of the local Catholic churches on the bells, and they're actually real bells. Las Vegas is a cool town. It's been around a long time. It was the largest city between let's see, where was it? On the Santa Fe Trail. It was the largest city between St. Louis and San Francisco. And just if you haven't been there, you need to make the trip. If you're just traveling north on I-25, you're going to miss it. So you got to get off the road. It kind of bypasses Las Vegas, but there's some neat stuff there. Our house I found the front part of our house on an old map that was drawn in 1882, I believe. And then our house, as the family grew, they added on towards the west. So it was facing east. It was a small house, and then there's two other sections. I might have mentioned this before, but anyway, downtown on the plaza, there's the Plaza Hotel, supposedly haunted. The Castaneda Hotel, which was the Harvey House, built in like 1909, I believe. But the train, runs right by. The train still runs by it today, Amtrak. So, I'd love to do an Amtrak trip, but have you looked at those prices? It's heavily subsidized by the federal government and the taxpayers, but it's still expensive. So it's something you have to plan and budget for. But anyway, I'm going to go up there and probably have a fire in our little wood burning stove. We always do, and it's always this time of year. It's chilly enough. But let's talk about fireplace safety a little bit. And it's funny, the fireplace at home here in Clovis has become more for my dog Scout than I think for my wife. She loves it. Scout she knows when I'm starting to build a fire, and she'll get up right under me and try to help me. But I'll post a picture of her by the fireplace, maybe on our Facebook page, Morning Buzz with the Energy Guys. But nothing quite creates an ambiance as good as a log in the fireplace and a family gathered around to appreciate its warmth and pleasing light. So here's some things I want you to think about. I'm going to read through these quickly, some that I put together. If possible, keep a window cracked open while the fire is burning. Be certain the damper or flue is open during starting a fire. Keeping the damper or flue open until the fire is out will draw smoke out of the house. That's important. And you'll know when you start to burn your fire if it's open or not, because smoke will start filling the room. The damper can be checked by looking up into the chimney with a flashlight or mirror. Do not close the damper until the embers have completely stopped burning. Use dry and well-aged wood. This is important. Wet or green wood causes more smoke and contributes to soot buildup in the chimney. Dried wood burns with less smoke and burns more evenly. Smaller pieces of wood placed on a grate burn faster and produce less smoke. Clean out ashes from previous fires. Levels of ash at the base of the fireplace should be kept to 1 inch or less because a thicker layer restricts the airflow and resulting in more smoke. The chimney should be checked annually by a professional. Even if the chimney is not due for cleaning, it is important to check for bird's nest or other blockage that could prevent smoke from escaping. Make sure the area around a fireplace is clear of anything that is potentially flammable, such as furniture, drapes, newspapers, books. If these items get too close to the fireplace, they could combust. Never leave the fire in the fireplace unattended. Make sure it is completely out before going or leaving the house. Now, some of our members in the northern part of our service area, like we don't serve Las Vegas, but there are certain areas, say for Santa Rosa, for instance, and north of there, fireplace and wood-burning stoves are their primary heat source. So they have to keep fires. They may get up 2 or 3 times during the night to stoke the fire or add wood. That's what we've done when we're in Las Vegas, but it helps as far on the safety side. If you do have a wood burning stove, that you can close the door on it and just open the airflow a little bit so it continues to burn and continues to provide heat well into the early morning hours. Keep kids safe. Put fireplace tools and accessories out of the children's reach. Also remove lighters and matches. Install smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Test them monthly and charge batteries at least once a year. Change batteries, Keep a fire extinguisher close and on hand. Communicate to the children as early as possible the dangers of fires and the best way to stay safe. So there's a little bit of fireplace safety. Before coming in to do the show, I was talking to my wife, and again, I'm home, so we were having a conversation. And she said, "Why don't you do something about? We're coming up on the holidays. It is November 8th, and why don't you do something on holiday savings? What can you do around the holidays to save a little money?" So we are all about energy efficiency and saving money. So here we go. I did a little research, and I've got some stuff we're going to talk about. We're 12 minutes into the program, so I'm going to get going. And we do have this day in history, and it's pretty interesting this time around. I hope it always is, but to me it was exceptionally interesting. So to save energy this holiday season, switch to LED lights. A lot of you have already done that. Use timers for decorations, unplug devices to stop phantom loads, optimize cooking by baking multiple items at once, lower your thermostat, and add blankets. Seal drafts around windows and doors. Use energy efficient appliances. Plan for travel, and embrace natural lighting. This all contributes to lowering your energy use. Now we're going to delve a little deeper into some of those. That was just a little bit of an overview. So lighting and decorations. Switch to LED lights. Use LED Christmas lights, which use significant. When I researched this, they call them holiday lights, and I can't stomach that. I'm sorry. I may not be politically correct on this, but I'm going to call it what it is. Christmas lights. They use significantly less energy than traditional bulbs. The prices have come down considerably. A few years back they're expensive, but now they almost have price parity with the old incandescent tree lights. They also produce less heat, so not as much of a fire hazard. And what I've learned to do, and this is a life hack, and some of you would probably engage in this, is buy lights at the end of the season for next year. Because you'll go into any hardware store or major big box store, and they've already, not only the Christmas lights out way before Thanksgiving, by Thanksgiving they're actually reducing the prices on Christmas decorations. So if you can wait until right after Thanksgiving to decorate your Christmas, your home with Christmas decorations. But as you get closer to Christmas, those prices are going to get rock bottom, because they really don't, these stores really don't want to carry over old merchandise into the next year. So they want to get rid of this year's stock. So life hack, buy lights and decorations at the end of the season for next year. Use timers. Connect indoor and outdoor lights to timers to ensure they're only on when necessary. Unplug when not in use. Turn off and unplug lights and other electronics when you go to bed or leave the house. Enhance with tinsel. Tinsel was something we used to use years and years ago. It's still available, but there are also mirrored ornaments. But what they do is they reflect the light, tinsel and mirrored ornaments, and they make existing lights appear brighter. And that way you may be able to use less strings of light, therefore saving a little money. Not only the cost of the strings of light, but in the energy that they consume. Heating and cooling is something I talk about all the time. Adjust your thermostat. Lower the temperature when you're home and awake, because you can dress in layers, right? You have two choices. You can either pay this high bill, and some people opt for that. They want to be comfortable. And they don't want to dress in layers. Maybe they want to run around in their bare feet. Maybe they've got, you know, a little more dollars than cents. That's what my mom would have said. But anyway, dress in layers is what I suggest. And as the day warms up, take a layer up. Have a t-shirt, have a regular shirt, and have a little light jacket or sweater, or a hoodie, and be able to just shed those off as the day warms up or the home warms up. Use blankets and flannel sheets. If you've never used flannel, this is nice because they're pretty cozy, flannel sheets, and this is coming from experience. Flannel sheets, they're awesome. And another thing we've got is at home, coming from experience, is an electric blanket. I meant to look it up. They do not use much energy. I'm going to say, without looking it up, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but they're around 150 watts. And what we have are dual controls, and man, they're fantastic. So about the time we start getting ready for bed, whether it's my wife or me first, the others letting the dogs out. While the others letting the dogs out, one of us will go in, start getting ready for bed, and turn our both heaters on high. And then, man, we dive into bed, because we've had our thermostat down. We're down around 68 degrees on these cool, cold nights. One thing about my fireplace, though, it saves me a little money. It not only does it warm the house, but it warms the thermostat, because it's pretty close to the thermostat. And it'll push that thermostat up and turn off my central air conditioning and heating, or my heater. I've got geothermal, but it'll turn off the heating because it thinks the whole house is warmed up to beyond 68. So that's another way to save money. I mean, just proximity to the thermostat. But let's go on. Lower the temperature when you're at home and awake. Turn it down. Let's see, I already did that one. We talked about flannel sheets, electric blanket. Man, that is a great investment. There's also electric throws out there, and they're pretty awesome. My wife has one that we've got. When I redid the floors in our house, we had a sunken living den, and I brought it up to the level of the rest of the house. It was an addition, and then we laid hardwood floor down to match the rest of the flooring, and it's the good stuff. I mean, it's red oak, probably 3/4 of an inch thick by 2.5 inches, tongue and groove. And my wife and I laid, because there was a little water damage in the kitchen and the dining room, and they had taken all the hardwood out and replaced it. We took all the replacement I don't know what you call them. Anyway, it was the kind of the snap in floor panels. But we took all that out and went back. The subfloor was in good shape, so we went back with our tongue and groove red oak, and we together laid about 1,800 square feet. Once we had the kitchen, the dining room, and the den done, and we did that about 5 years ago. I don't know that I could do it today. My knees make too much noise when I bend down like that, when I have to kneel like that, squat. But it was fun to do that together as a project. Let's see. Seal air leaks. Seal air leaks around windows and doors to keep warm air in and cold air out. So something else I talk about all the time. Warm air that's inside your house is expensive, so you want to trap it. You want to keep it. And it's trying to get to the cold. That's what warm air tries to do. It tries to find, it wants to escape your house. It wants to get outside. It wants to cool off a little bit. So that is the nature of warm air, trying to seek cold air. And it'll find any crack or crevice or single pane window or cracked window or anything it can to get out. An open flue with no fire burning, it'll go up the chimney. I promise you. But I've said this once. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. When in doubt, caulk. Clear silicone caulk around windows if you don't know. There are ways to detect leaks, but sometimes it's easier just to put a clear coat of silicone caulking where the window meets a different surface in the window. The window pane meets the wall. That's where you caulk. And you can put it on, put a bead down and smooth it out. It's clear. So the paint will bleed through and you can see it. And just make sure you smooth it out. You can use a wet finger. You can use a plastic spoon. And there's also tools available for that. But I found that a wet finger works better than anything. You just have to have a wet rag to wipe it on occasionally to get the residual caulking off. It gets kind of sticky, so you want to start out with a good wet finger. Utilize natural light. Open curtains on south-facing windows during the day to let sunlight warm your home. That's always nice. East side in the morning, south side in the mid-morning, because by then the sun is coming in, and in the lower part of the southern sky, especially the dead of winter, it's a real short apex. And that's why our days are so short. And that shortest day, I think the winter solstice is around December 21st this year. It's not always, it falls on or near the 21st usually. That is the shortest day, or the shortest amount of light. So all the days will continue to get short until the shortest day around the winter solstice. And that's the beginning of winter, the official beginning of winter. And then the next day, the days become longer. They'll start getting longer. And the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year, or the most light available, is June 21st, give or take. And that's when the beginning of summer. But that natural light, I wear my blinds and curtains out because I'm going around. Of course, my wife calls me the energy Nazi. But I go around opening, closing blinds, turning them at a certain angle so letting the sun in, but I can still see out. 45 degrees works pretty good for that. But you'll get good at it and you'll enjoy the fact that you're saving a little money. I got to move along pretty quickly now. We're 23 minutes after. Kitchen and appliance cook efficiently. Bake multiple dishes at the same time and take advantage of oven heat and use smaller appliances like microwaves for smaller items. After cooking, turn the oven off, but open the door until the heat from the oven dissipates into the kitchen and beyond. We do that all the time. Load dishwashers fully. Wait until the dishwasher is completely full before running it, and use the air dry cycle. Yeah, so we don't use the heater at all. I just I think our whole process of washing the dishes takes about 49 minutes. Whatever that cycle is, it's like 49 minutes, but it doesn't include heat. So as soon as it's done or I hear it go off, I'll go in there and open the door, and when that cool air hits the really warm dishes, because they've been in very hot water, they start to dry out. Manage refrigerator use. Limit opening the refrigerator door and ensure the temperature is set correctly, 35 to 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's it on holiday savings. And I thought there was some great stuff in there, and it's nice to know when I start researching these things that this is a lot of stuff I do and I've done, and partly because I've done a radio show for 5 years. I did on energy efficiency. It was a weekly called Morning Buzz with the Energy Guys. There was two of us, and then of course this is our 21st episode of Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy, since I'm the only one. But prior to that, I wrote newsletter articles for 25 years, monthly newsletter articles. And, in all that research, I've become, I guess, I'm an expert, okay? Just sometimes you just call it what it is. If it looks like a rose and smells like a rose, it's probably a rose. So that's why they call me the energy guy. 25 minutes after the hour. Let me go into this day in history. And there was some interesting stuff. Earlier, I talked about Bonnie Raitt, and I was playing one of her songs. And Bonnie Raitt was born this day, November 8th, 1949. Singer, songwriter, and guitarist who blended blues, folk, rock, and country. Grammy winner with a beautiful tone and talent. Bonnie Raitt's biggest hits include Nick of Time, I Can't Make You Love Me, and you need to look some of these up and listen to them. Something to Talk About. Other popular tracks like Angel from Montgomery, Love Sneaking Up to You, and her version of Runaway. And I'm telling you, she has a beautiful tone. Sometimes her voice is a little raspy, particularly as she got a little older, but I liked it. It was a nice twist on her original stuff. But Bonnie Raitt, born this day, 1949. Bram Stoker, born November 8th, 1847. And I thought this was appropriate because, we just had Halloween and watching some scary movies and horror movies and that kind of thing. And Irish author who unleashed the vampire genre with his 1897 gothic horror novel, Dracula. I don't know how many movies there's been made of Dracula, but I'm going to say probably about 100. And that's about 98 too many, if you ask me. But, one or two of those is okay, but it gets kind of old after a while. It's like, okay, this bat is going to turn into a vampire, and he's going to stay away from sunlight, and wooden stakes are his enemy, and crosses, and by all means he has to stay away from holy water, but they're all the same plot. But there was this cool one that I saw when I was a kid. I can't remember it, but it was black and white, and it might have been because I was watching a black and white television, but I asked my mom and dad if I could stay up late, and I was probably 10. And we thought Dracula was going to get away with this, and he walks out into the street, and there's a church with a steeple, and the cross is on top of the steeple, and there's moonlight behind it, and it casts a shadow on the street, and he walks directly into the shadow, and he gets stuck, and he just burns to, ash, and the movie ends, and he doesn't win in the end. And then I'm in the living room, and I was going to spend the night, I was going to camp out in the living room, and I'm like, good night, Mama, good night, Daddy. They're like, good night. And I'm like, good night, Mama, good night, Dad. I don't know how many times I said that, and then my mom says, okay, come and get in. So I ran in and jumped in their bed. But yeah, Bram Stoker, born this day, 1847, died in 1912. Lincoln is reelected on November 8th, 1864. Northern voters overwhelmingly endorsed the leadership and policies of President Abraham Lincoln when they elect him to a second term. With his election, any hope for a negotiated settlement with the Confederacy vanished. So the effective end of the American Civil War, this isn't something else that's intriguing, was, and a lot of people might not have even thought about this, but I had an idea of when these dates were, but I looked them up to make sure. But April 9th, 1865 was the effective end to, wasn't the official end, but the effective end of the war when Confederate General Robert E. Lee officially surrendered to the Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. President Lincoln then, and this is what was crazy, was assassinated on April 14th, 1865. So that was a mere 5 days after the effective end of the Civil War. So he didn't get to, appreciate the end of the war and the fact that the Union had defeated the Confederate uprising. And it was, I think for the longest time they called it the Great War. It wasn't even referred to as the American Civil War until maybe later, but I saw a number of books on it that mentioned the Great War. November 8th, Doc Holliday, it doesn't have a year here. Maybe it's later, but I want to read this to you because it was really interesting. Gunslinger, gambler, and occasional dentist dies from tuberculosis. Though he was the most famous for his participation in the shootout at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona, John Henry Doc Holliday earned his bad reputation well before that famous feud. Born in Georgia, Holliday was raised in the tradition of a Southern in the tradition of a Southern gentleman. He earned his nickname when he graduated from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery in 1872. However, shortly after embarking on a respectable career as a dentist in Atlanta, he developed a bad cough. Doctors diagnosed tuberculosis and advised him to move to a more arid climate, so Holliday moved his practice to Dallas, Texas. By all accounts, Holliday was a competent dentist with a successful practice. Unfortunately, cards, alcohol, and little wild women interested him more than teeth. The first time I read that, I thought it was talking about his teeth, but then I recalled he was a dentist. So I know in the Tombstone, Val Kilmer that played Doc Holliday had really nice teeth, but I think that was referring to his being a dentist. Anyway, he earned his reputation as a skilled poker and faro player. Holliday was famously friendly with Wyatt Earp, who believed that Holliday saved his life during a fight with the Cowboys. For his part, Holliday was a loyal friend to Earp and stood by him during the 1881 shootout at the OK Corral and bloody feud that followed. In 1882, Holliday fled Arizona, returned to the life of a Western drifter, gambler, and gunslinger. By 1887, his hard living had caught up to him, forcing him to seek retirement for his tuberculosis at a sanitarium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. He died in his bed alone, and he was only 36 years old. On a side note, real quick, it ties into my Las Vegas, New Mexico history. I believe before he went up to Tombstone, he stopped at and lived a while in Las Vegas, and he was part owner in a saloon on Bridge Street. And the Bridge Street's kind of the main drag that takes you into. It runs east and west, but it takes you into the plaza, the square. If you haven't been to Las Vegas, take the time and go. I'm going to be there the rest of this weekend, so we will see you next time for Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy.